Welcome to this explainer. Look, if there's one thing you can absolutely bet the house on in the tech world, it's Apple's relentless, clockwork-like pace when it comes to chip development, right? Every single year, a new iPhone drops, and boom, we get a new piece of custom silicon. But this fall, the reports are pointing to something uniquely fascinating. The upcoming iPhone 18 Pro and that highly anticipated iPhone Ultra, they aren't just getting your standard iterative update. No way. They're getting something extra special under the hood. Two major hardware upgrades that are literally going to redefine mobile processing. So that brings us to the big question. What exactly makes the A20 Pro so different? Well, as we just noted, every year brings a new chip. But rumors are heavily suggesting the A20 Pro is shaping up to be an absolute anomaly in its power leaps. We're not just talking about a minor little bump in speed here. We're looking at a fundamental shift in how the chip is fabricated and how it's packaged. These are the kinds of massive generational leaps that really only happen every few years. Okay, let's dive right into this and peel back the first layer. Section 1, meet the A20 Pro, Apple's next-gen chip. Which brings us to Section 2, the 2-nanometer revolution and TSMC's new process. Guys, it is genuinely awe-inspiring when you stop and actually consider the microscopic scale of the modern tech we literally carry around in our pockets. We're talking about engineering at a nearly atomic level here. So let's break down exactly what that means. The 2-nanometer process is TSMC's absolute cutting-edge chip fabrication technology. And to pull this off, Apple actually works years in advance, holding secret meetings and everything, just to secure all of TSMC's newest tech capacity. They do this to ruthlessly maintain their edge, not just for the iPhone, but eventually across iPads and Macs too. It's this massive logistical and engineering flex that lets them cram way more advanced components into the exact same physical space. And this brilliantly illustrates the real-world impact of that nanometer shrink when we compare the current generation's 3-nanometer process to the next generation's 2-nanometer process. Well, the math works heavily in our favor. Because the microscopic transistors are physically smaller, you can fit a lot more of them into the exact same chip footprint. And simply put, more transistors equal more processing power. But here's the really cool part. Because they're smaller and packed closer together, it takes far less energy for the signals to travel between them, so the chip runs significantly more efficiently with way less wasted energy turning into heat. All right, let's move along to our next highly technical upgrade. Section 3. What is WMCM? A look at packaging innovation. Okay, please don't let this super complex sounding term overwhelm you. A wafer-level multi-chip module, or WMCM, is basically just a packaging innovation. It simply means that instead of building different parts of the processor separately and then trying to connect them all later, Apple is integrating these components directly at the wafer level, literally before the silicon is even diced up into individual chips. To give this a bit of journalistic authority, here's how Marcus from 9to5Mac perfectly explained the breakthrough. He said, WMCM allows different components, like the SoC and DRAM, to be integrated directly at the wafer level before being diced into individual chips. So your system on a chip, the brain, and the DRAM, the memory, are literally being fused together way earlier in the manufacturing process than we've ever seen before. Now, what's really interesting here is the sheer physical proximity this creates. Since this WCMC technique entirely skips the traditional interposer or substrate that usually connects these parts, the chip physically sits much closer to its onboard memory. Less physical distance means better heat management, those are your thermal benefits, and vastly improved signal integrity. Think of it like moving from a house out in the suburbs where you have to commute through traffic every day to an apartment directly above your office. Everything is just faster, smoother, and way more efficient. But hey, hardware is really only half the story, right? Let's move to Section 4, powering the AI future and explore iOS 27 capabilities. 27. That is the magic number that makes all of this incredibly expensive, highly advanced hardware engineering completely necessary. According to the source, iOS 27 is going to be heavily AI-centric. And as we know, artificial intelligence processes require a tremendous amount of on-device computation. Honestly, if you tried to run these complex AI models on older chip architecture, well, your phone would overheat, it'd slow down to an absolute crawl, and your battery, it'd be completely dead by lunch. So the crucial takeaway here is that this combination, the 2-nanometer shrink giving us all that crazy efficiency, plus the WMCM packaging giving us lightning-fast memory access, is exactly what's required to deliver better performance and lower power consumption for intense AI processing and high-end gaming. Apple isn't just building this to win some arbitrary spec sheet war. They are building a rock-solid foundation so iOS 27 can run localized, heavy AI tasks totally effortlessly, without completely sacrificing your battery life in the process. Which brings us to our final thought for the day. How will these invisible, microscopic hardware changes define the future of your visible, daily software? It's pretty fascinating to realize that every massive leap in what our phones can actually do, the software magic we interact with on our screens every single day, is entirely dependent on tiny, hidden engineering feats happening right at the atomic level. I really hope this explainer helped demystify exactly what's coming inside the iPhone 18 Pro. Thanks so much for joining me, and stay curious.